Hi. Okay, I'm going to be speaking in a fairly normal tone of voice right now. You probably can't hear a word I'm saying. These guys have been waiting 17 years to do this. Hey, shouldn't you be wearing a mask or something? You can't just be sitting out there with the... All right, look, that is Mark from Bugman Education and Science Shows from 2016 pre-pandemic. This is Mark from Bugman Education and Science Shows from 2021, right in the middle of the pandemic. A lot of differences from before the pandemic to now. We're all doing things differently. One thing is we're doing virtual bug programs because we haven't been able to get out and show people bugs in person for over a year. Also, now everybody's wearing masks, and so look, we've got our special bug masks, and there's my praying mantis mask, right? Oh, and I can show you another difference between before the pandemic and during the pandemic, because since it's just me and my imaginary friend here in the studio, I can take off my mask and show you the pandemic beard. If you're lucky, you get yourself a big science beard during the pandemic, right? And you get yourself some nice Einstein science hair, then you can show people bugs. All right, now, one thing that's the same between 2016 and 2021 is they were both big, huge years in Ohio for periodical cicadas. Well, 2021 hasn't been one yet, but it's about to be. And so this show, we're going to tell you about the periodical cicadas and where they live and how long they live and why they live for as long as they do. Well, we'll talk about why they live for as long as they do, but nobody knows for sure. So we'll just kind of do some speculation about that. We're going to start off at the bug board, and so I'll see you over at the big bug board, and we'll let this guy finish up whatever I don't know, he's probably just about, yeah. All right, oh look, there's some of those cicadas now. All right, see you at the big bug board. Okay, we can start with the basics. Cicadas are insects. They're insects, and just like all other insects, and the reason they're actually called insects is because their bodies are in sections. Bet you never thought of that before. Insects' bodies are in sections. That's why they're called insections. Insects. Insect bodies are actually in 3 sections. There's a head in the front, there's a thorax in the middle, and an abdomen. We're the same way. We got a head in the front, we have a thorax right here. If, you know, call this your chest, right? But a doctor calls this your thoracic cavity. And this right here is your abdominal cavity. That's where you got your abs, your abdominal muscles right down there. We have 3 sort of body parts also. Head, thorax, and abdomen. And if we were standing on all 4s like mammals are supposed to, then it would be almost exactly like a bug. And then not at all like a bug, the insects also have 6 legs. And so we have 4. They have 6. Oh, these guys also have really cool red eyes. They also have 3 little eyes that I didn't put on this drawing. I could if I had it together more. Probably should. Okay, I will. And then they also have 4 wings. Insects have 4 wings, and sometimes they're modified so they don't look like 4 wings. But the cicadas, you'll see, definitely have 4 wings. And the 17-year cicadas, the periodical Brood 10 that's coming up this year, has bright orange wings. They're striking. Oh, and they also have red eyes. And it looks like they have 2 beady red eyes. But if you saw those up close, those are compound eyes, which means that they have little teeny tiny eyes in those big 2 red eyes. When you see a cicada in person this summer, or next week this spring, you'll see that they've got these 3 little eyes called ocelli. Ocelli. Here, let me hide the wings and you can see. See, they're called ocelli. And that's when there's 3. One of them is an ocellus. That's Latin. When it ends with US, usually you change it to I if it's going to be plural. Some people call those simple eyes, but they're on an insect that's been living for 17 years and they actually do stuff. So I don't know how simple that is, but they mostly are supposedly see light and dark, and then it can help them measure the light cycle, or maybe tell if it's cloudy or sunny, or figure out where shade is, or maybe see if a predator's coming, but that triangle arrangement sort of helps them figure out what direction things are coming from, I guess. And also their life cycle is so weird. Aside from the fact that it's 17 years long, they occur in different parts of the eastern United States. Here, let me show you on the map. The only place in the world you can find Magis cicada, the periodical cicadas, is in the eastern and midwestern United States, mostly in the northern, eastern, and midwestern United States. And they occur in groups in different areas on the same 17-year cycle, and each of those groups is called a brood. And now there are 15 broods that people recognize, although the three that are in the southern parts, this sort of pinkish color over here and this light blue color, those are on 13-year cycles. And so in the warmer climates, it seems to be accelerated. And a brood isn't just one species of Magis cicada, it's usually up to 3 species of Magis cicada. So they're all on the same 17-year cycle. For example, this is brood 2, and it's up, you can see it's up in Connecticut, and up in some in New York and Pennsylvania, up around on the East Coast, and then it's not all the way, look, it's not contiguous. It doesn't all touch, but this comes up at the same time right here. Those are all brood 2. They last came up in 2013. So if you stood right here in New York and saw the 17-year cicadas in 2013, and then you just stood there for 17 years, they would come up again there, but not until then. And between the 17-year and 13-year ones, sometimes there's stragglers. There'll be 17-year ones that come out 4 years early, and there'll be 13-year ones that come out 4 years late. And then sometimes it's fewer or more years, and so the straggler, but most of the time it's within 4 years, and that is supposed to be part of how new broods evolved, or the remnants of old broods that went extinct. Actually, when Marlatt discovered these things, or first identified and labeled with Roman numerals all the different broods, he came up with 30 different broods. But most of those weren't seen year after year after year since the turn of the last century, and so they got wiped off the map. This year is brood 10, and in Ohio, brood 10 is going to be over on the western part of Ohio, right? Actually, they're already there, and you can go out and see them now. There's 4 different broods that kind of make it into Ohio. Brood 5 is what's behind us. That was 2016. This was at Dillon State Park, which is sort of around the Zanesville area, central eastern Ohio. And then this year is brood X. This orange one over here is brood 10, and they're just about to come up. And so if you go over to that part of Ohio, you'll already be able to see the nymphs coming up out of the ground. And I've seen some pictures on Facebook and the internet of people with adults that have already emerged. Today is May 17th. And so there are some adults that have already emerged, but they didn't say where they were. And so different parts of their range, you might already see some adults. And then it takes a little while, days before they start to actually start calling. And when that happens, wherever they're at, whoever is there will know it. This year, though, brood 10 is on the western part of Ohio, and you can see from the big map it's also in other places. Actually, if you want to just see brood 10 is all these little blue dots. You can see some of it overlaps with where brood 2 is, but these are on a different cycle than brood 2, and so there's overlaps, not a whole lot, but there are overlaps, especially on the edges. One of the things that's really interesting about all this is that, it's 2021, right? The last time brood 10 was up was 2004. 2004, we didn't have such great GPS in our phones. We didn't have real convenient long battery laptops we could drive around with. Now the researchers who are out there can just drive around where they know the brood exists, and they can have their windows open and look at and then push the data in their keyboard, and you can tell by the calls which species it is. And so every year these guys come up in a particular area. The technology is so much better that they can refine the edges of the different broods much better. Also, This year, if you want to get involved, you can go to the site cicadasafari.org and you can enter in data yourself and help them figure out where Brood X actually exists. The other thing about this is in 2004, they couldn't do with DNA what they can do with DNA now. And when they were up before that in 1987, I mean, the ability to actually measure a genome and all that, the Human Genome Project hadn't happened. They hadn't discovered CRISPR yet. You know, CRISPR is the thing that lets you use DNA like Legos, and they can figure out all kinds of stuff. CRISPR, by the way, clustered, ready? Clustered, regularly, interspaced, short palindromic repeats. Anyway, very complicated DNA research that they didn't have in 2004. So now when they can do DNA analyses of Brood 10, they're going to have a much better understanding of the divisions in species and start to gain better insights of how the evolution of such a bizarre life cycle ever happened in the first place. And you can get involved too. How cool is that? It's pretty cool. That's how cool.